Hi, I'm Nate, and I'm going to give you a hands-on demonstration of some of the many ways our dungeon's traps and hazards can be used. This is a very versatile collection that lets you build a variety of surprises and challenges for your players. Let's dive in and take a look. So we have quite a variety of traps and hazards. I'll just go over the general styles of things that we have. So first off, we've got magnetic traps. So they have magnets on the back, and the idea is that when they are triggered, you can pop them onto a magnetic wall, like we did with this crossbow trap. You could also just have them there from the get-go if you want to have a threat right out of the gate. You can pop them in against magnetic walls in the passages also. Makes for really good obstacles and passages. And of course, you can also use these just freestanding on the floor or wherever you'd like as well. So a variety of different magnetic ones that you can pop sort of anywhere you want or just freestand them. We have some floor traps. So in this case, it looks like a regular floor. We have a little floor removal tool. Pop in there and we can reveal there's spikes underneath. So this is the same height as regular floors, same top as regular floors, slightly shorter and can accommodate. We have a couple of different traps you can put underneath there. Those are really fun to reveal. And then finally, we have freestanding bits, like this is the magnetic trap holder. So it's got magnetic spears on there, slides around. And we have a bunch of freestanding things. Some of them are basically miniatures. Some of them are objects. And basically anything could be a trap or a hazard, right? Any particularly weird magical apparatus and the like. We also have, for generally hazards, a negative space collection. So we have different texture patches, such as these, right? So different with lava, acid, ice, bottomless pit, a whole bunch of these. You can put these down in place of a floor, so it can be whatever's underneath there, whatever's exposed underneath the floor. Or you can put, we have a little lid you can put around it, a rim, so that then you can put it underneath the floor trap, and it's in the same height as a regular floor, and you can reveal whatever is underneath there. Then with the larger version, we have terrain trays. So these are small 4x8 terrain trays. We have a variety of sizes, and these are generally used to, you can build on top of them because they're magnetic, right? So then the pieces will stick to them, but you can expose them for negative space builds. So if you leave any of this exposed, you build around it and leave it exposed, and you've got a lava pit. If you leave the water exposed, you can have a little running river through your thing or whatnot. So these are great obstacles. By just building around them and leaving them clear, you now have a whole bunch of some sort of hazard obstacle in the way, very easy to accomplish, and they look great, sort of graphic, visual, color pop in your dungeon. All right, so let's go see how these are implemented in a build. All right, for our first build here, we're going to use the toolbox of 2 core sets. So we have a starter and an advanced core, both in the vaulted flavor. We have a dungeon passages straights, dungeon passages intersections, and rolling boulders. So we're not going to use all of those pieces. We use about 2/3 of them, but that's the toolbox we're working with. And the way I have it sort of built out here is one of the ways you can present it to your players. I like bringing stuff in as it's discovered, so it sort of helps stop a little metagaming and has more of a sense of discovery. You could also just build everything out, cover it with cloth, or even bring it out in even smaller increments. But for this demo, we're going to start with this bit. And the premise here is this is sort of an obstacle course style build, a gauntlet, as it were, where a lot of the hazards are already visible. So the idea would be, this is sort of the staging room, right? Players can come in through this little door on the side. This is staging room. It's kind of the safe spot where they can kind of figure out, make a plan, get their bearings before they get thrown into all the hazards that await. So we have a nice open arch over here. You could give them a little clue, like if somebody's investigating or has good perception, they could note there's a little hidden slot in the ceiling or something, imply that there's bars up there or something looks like a portcullis that could be lowered or triggered, but they don't know what triggers it, right? Give them the more you can give clues to your players, the more they'll have fun stuff to discover and find clever solutions. Maybe solutions they didn't even know. And then ideally you'd kind of get a sense they would see this whole passage, right? So the fun of this sort of a trap build is laying out a bunch of challenges for them so that they can sort of plan rather than have to do it spontaneously. They can kind of make a plan of, okay, what am I going to do? What's my line? How are we going to get through this? They have an idea of what all of the challenges are. Of course, You might have a few surprises for them, but at least they can kind of get the lay of the land. So they can see, got some swinging blade traps, so we're just using the magnetic traps on. We've got the magnetic passage walls here, so we got a pair of those on either side. Once again, this is a thing, you could spring these out if you can have stuff just triggered as the players go. But in this case, I wanted to sort of lay everything out so they would have an idea what they're looking at versus all this a whole bunch of surprises. We're using the flame jet trap here, and this is the magnetic plinth arch. It's got magnetic back, so it's really a good freestanding thing. Lets you put traps anywhere. And then at the end of the hull here, we've got a spike pit. Once again, we could put the lid on it if we wanted to, and then have them stumble into it. But in this case, we wanted to just sort of show our hand early on so they can try and figure out what's going on. You could say this is set down into the ground 5 feet or 10 feet or something. Like, you don't have to actually have the whole build elevated and drop it down. You can just say, hey, this pit goes down 10 feet or 20 feet or whatever it is into the spikes. And then to make things spicy on the other side of the spikes, we have portcullis here. So that's going to be our first big challenge waiting at the end is, okay, how do we get over this pit and open up this portcullis when you don't have a floor to stand on? Notably, there's a passageway here. They don't know what's down there, and there's a door here. They don't know what's there. So we haven't put these rooms out until they explore a little further. And this build is, you can take a look at our hands-on passages video to get an idea of how to build with these passages pieces, because this is a generally passages-heavy build here. All right, so just to make things interesting, let's put a little treasure chest here in the plinth arch. And this isn't actually in our toolbox of pieces. You could use any sort of MacGuffin that you have lying around, any little treasure thing, or just say there's treasure there. But I like to have a little physical treasure to get the players excited. And of course, somebody's always going to go for it. So let's assume that somebody goes for the treasure chest. So the first fun gag we can do with this thing is freestanding, right? So you do the click, 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 right? It slowly lifts up to reveal. And it fits perfectly in the passageway. So it's a great way to sort of do like a hidden door sort of thing. You can lift it up. Reveal. So we'll drop in this ramp. So we just took a bunch of passages, put it around. This is the little boulder ramp. Pop in there. So you pop that in place, and we're going to put a big old boulder on top. So now we have just upped the drama, right? So we have a bunch of visible traps. Now there is a visible trap that is, oh man, these ones at least they can kind of avoid or just don't go near. This is like, oh, when is this going to happen? What's going to trigger this off? A lot of suspense. You could also, depending on what we want to do, at some point we're going to trigger that portcullis, right? And drop that thing back down, right? Portcullis is a really good an obstacle, as particularly if the players don't have control of it going down. So we could drop the portcullis at the same time that's going up. Portcullis could start going down, or you could wait until someone steps in here and then have a point on there where it triggers and boom, the portcullis goes down. It might be fun in this case to have it go down really slowly, so the players can do like the Indiana Jones thing, like dive under, grab their hat, and just before it slams shut or whatnot. But the idea is we're making a bottleneck here. It's forcing players to deal with this thing. And by introducing the boulder, we can now put a ticking clock on it, right? So this thing is starting to roll or getting ready to roll, or they can see we've got a little spring release we can use to roll it. You probably wouldn't want to do it because it goes in, D&D time is very, very slow. But you could indicate it's slowly kind of working its way forward, about to roll, getting to the edge, make some snappy decisions. Then when you do roll it, you could have the same thing. You could have it have a certain movement rate, and you could slowly roll it down the corridor if you want, sort of chasing them, forcing them to make turns rapidly or whatnot. It's a great pressure device, great way to do all some damage. Just great cinematic piece. Running away from boulder, always fun. Of course, they could also find this clever way to get out before the portcullis gets them, or divert it, or there's a lot of fun ways they could have this thing go off the rails, or maybe they just haven't. They maybe just dodge out of the way and it goes down and it smashes through and clears the way of all the traps, and then they feel really clever. Because that's the other fun thing as a DM. Let the players break the stuff, right? Let them beat the thing. They'll feel really good if they find clever ways to beat the stuff. So one way or another, they can navigate. Swinging blade traps are always fun. Becomes acrobatics challenges or some sort of dexterity challenge, or you finding a clever way to stop them with shields or metal bars or who knows what. Right? Clever physical thing that's relatively easy to bypass. when we get over here to fire, we could introduce another room. So I'm going to just going to drop down a passage when they look around the corner, boom, and let's put a door at the end of that, right? So now, maybe this flame jet is, once again, it's something we could reveal, but I think it's more fun to have it just sort of out there. So maybe the players can get around, somebody goes in here. The fun gag we can do here is, once again, this is freestanding. So if we want, we can have this wall start to slide forward also, and give them, force them to figure out if they have to check this for traps or pick the lock or just bash it open or whatever. They've got to deal with this door quickly if the fire is coming on them, or they have to bail out of the hallway and think, oh no, maybe this thing is going to get locked. Maybe it locks in place and seals that room off if they don't go in there or whatnot. So once again, it gives, it makes them have to make some immediate decisions. They had a bunch of time to plan. Now they have to make some immediate decisions. So it changes the tempo of the encounter. So let's say they do pop open the door. Maybe it's a fun chance to use some lock picking. We get in there, they pick the locks, or they bash open the door, they do some other clever, they get to use that knock spell they had or whatever. We get a room with some levers in here. Of course, they don't know what they do. Levers are always fun. You present players with levers, there's all sorts of options. These levers also, we've got, it's movable. So you could say there's a setting here, there's a setting there. You could say there's a setting at the 45. You could have, it could be a whole physical puzzle, right? And maybe they got some clue on it before, and one has to be upright and one has to be at 45, or they both have to be 45 or something. Or you could have them trigger something that they don't know. In this case, I'm going to say maybe these are these open the portcullis. So there's a way around the portcullis if they're clever. Because that's sort of the last final challenge in this hall is the portcullis. So we have this pit trap here, big 10-foot gap, then a pretty sheer wall with a portcullis. So the question is, and of course this is probably locked, right? So it's how do you get over here? How do you pick the lock or bend the bars or rip the thing open while you can't stand on the floor? Or they could use this to open it. One way or another, it's a fun challenge that lets them try and use a bunch of their skills or spells or abilities or just some clever thing. There's stuff they had lying around it they've been gathering in the dungeon, sitting in their bag of holding that they can finally use to circumvent this thing. And then our final little bit, and we just in the hallway here, we're just putting, this is just the open arch wall to introduce a portcullis, right? As soon as you put an obstacle, portcullis, something, a wall right at the end of this thing, it makes a normal pit much more difficult to deal with because you can't just jump across it. You could also, if you want to get, you could use the solid wall insert and put that in there, and then this looks like it's a dead end, and they have to find it. It's a secret door. It's even maybe it's even harder to figure out how to open this or not because it is solid. So it's another way to up the challenge on this. So let's say they bypass it one or another. We have one last little door, and I like having this kind of seal off so they don't have any idea how big or what's going on there. But we could, of course, push the door back, and let's have that. That door could open into a little room. It looks something like this. And so this is an example of we're just using, even though the traps are magnetic, you don't have to put them on the magnetic walls, right? In this case, I'm just taking the magnetic flame jet and we're putting it right on top of the descending stairs and saying it's a flame, right? Something that's shooting flames straight up on the stairs. So now once again, they've got to figure out maybe one of the levers shuts this off, one opens up the portcullis, or maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe they had a riddle earlier that they figured out, or maybe it's a chance to use, you could say their Ray of Frost cantrip or something they have in their bag they can use to sort of figure out how to stop up the flame and descend it on the stairs to the next level of the dungeon. So that's a bunch of basic uses of mostly magnetic traps and floor traps. Let's go look at maybe a little more advanced uses of some of these. Okay, so for this build, the toolbox we're working with is 3 core sets. So we have a starter, a regular core, and a core mega, all in the classic style, right? Plain walls. We have a dungeon floor set, mostly so we can get some of the narrow floors, the 4x1s and the 2x1s. We have a dungeon dressing starter, mostly for the throne, but the rest of the dressing was nice to give this little personality. We have a dungeon floor traps and hazards pack. We can do a lot of heavy lifting with that, right? Those false floor lids, we get a lot of mileage out of those in here. Magnetic traps, also absolute stars of the show on this one. And then we're working with 3 terrain trays. So we have a lava pool terrain tray. We're using the 12 by 12, but you could use a 6 by 12. And then we have a pair of 6 by 12s that can be any design because they're covered up. We're using just for support for building. So let's take a look at some of the techniques we're doing here. So the idea is that this is a boss fight. It's like from here on out, it's one big room over here, but there's sort of a little entry area to like get the players warmed up. So you have your intrepid band of heroes could enter over here. We have this area is like the guard room. You have some henchmen in here, simple little combat counter or something. It's a chance for a little bit of treasure, maybe an easy fight. And it's a chance to actually drop some information, right? So that you could seed in a little bit of information about the traps that are awaiting, so you could avoid any like feel bad gotchas. Give the players a little bit of info. Maybe the captain of the guard, she has like an important note that talks about a secret door or location of one of the traps or something, or a couple of things, right? Whatever you do, you want to sort of seed some of this info in before they get here, so that they can have a chance to avoid some of the pitfalls within, so it feels like a fair encounter. So fun, fighting on the tables, knocking stuff around, searching all the bits, getting some weapons. And they can move on in. The first little challenge. So we have plain old corridor. The gag here is, once again, we're not revealing anything until they discover it, right? So it's really fun to drop down, have reveals at the table, gets people engaged. So it is here somewhere along the way, either when maybe you cross the line here, or when you touch the door and try and unlock. We have this one door that's like the metal reinforced vault door. This is like, they know there's business behind here. So maybe as soon as they mess with that, or as soon as they cross the threshold, this door will wave out of existence. This was an illusion, and behind it is waiting. This is the spike trap, right? The little the trap holder and magnetic swallow spears, right? So that is just a fun and classic old gag. So you throw that in, and then you could sort of at any speed you want, you could have that start working its way down the hallway towards the players. Ideally, maybe someone's trying to pick the lock wherever this thing's coming in or whatnot. It's pretty easy to avoid. It gives a lot of ways they could kind of make this thing go off the rails. Pretty simple trap, and they could always just sort of let it smash into the wall and then circumvent it or whatever. But a fun little bit of danger, and it's fun to drop on the table, see what happens. So they get past that, we can pop on in and coming into the main room here. So the idea is, once you get into the main room, you got your villain up here. She's hanging out on her little like regal dais area and starts monologuing whatever. The gag is she's got these levers here. So we're actually using over here. This is one of the false floor lids. So it's a little lower than the regular floor, and we're using the metal on there to hold these. The magnetic levers are there. These represent like a bank of controls and levers. There's probably multiple levers, not just 2, because you want the gag is like the boss is kind of like setting off. It's like a fun house of death, right? They can set off different things to kind of torment the players as they work their way through. So so she's up here kind of monologuing and taunt them along the way. It's a chance to do a little role play while they're trying to work their way through the challenges. So at first blush, it doesn't seem to be too daunting. A room, pretty wide open space, a couple little side doors. You could have bad guys pop out of here. They could be treasure closets, or they could just be decoys or killer trap or who knows what, something to break up. The idea is we're trying to bottleneck this area to control the player movement a little bit, to try and force them towards the trap areas. So right out of the gate, we would reveal, like, she'd pull a lever and you'll never thwart my traps, and boom, 2 sections of the floor drop away. So part of this is just to add some drama, immediately make some more bottlenecks, right, to make player movement much more interesting and challenging, as well as maybe cue players like, hey, there could be a lot of floor traps in here if they haven't gotten the memo already. And then if we want to ratchet it up more, or wait till someone jumps over, we can start spraying up some plumes of fire in there to really make it look dangerous. And we've got some lava beneath as a sort of a hint of things to come. And perhaps the players can feel like an enormous amount of heat coming from this side of the room or from below, something to give them a hint that this is coming. So once again, still not too deadly, Maybe there's a bunch of ways of attack. Maybe they split up and come in, or maybe they come charging in. The villain is she's hoping they're going to charge straight in up this inviting staircase. And this is a potential gotcha moment. So ideally we would have warned the players in advance. But the gag is if they step on here, this is a false floor. And spikes beneath, right? Some pit of spikes underneath. So ideally you would give them some sort of warning, or at least a chance to save. If they stumble on it, they can try and catch the ledge or whatever and not fall in, because could be a feel bad gotcha. But the villain is of course hoping that they fall into the pit. Moving beyond that, we have, ostensibly they're going to move their way up to here and try and fight the big boss. We've got these 2 floors here. Astute players will notice that they're a little lower than the floors around them. So you could have your players make comment on that, or you can have the characters, someone with perception or whatever, check So the gag here is that either it triggers when they go on the stairs, or she triggers with a lever, or however you want to swing it as a DM, but you can pull a thing and there's little holes, pretend, there's little holes here, and slithering out, snakes come slithering out onto filling that spot. So the gag here is we're using the false floor lids beneath to raise up the snake false floors to the same height as the floors. And you can do the same thing if you were using spikes or whatever. It's a way to build, if you want to build in line and have everything at the same height, you just put the false floor lid beneath whatever floor trap you want on there, and you get it up to the same height. So in this case, we're using some snakes just maybe for drama or to skip, but it's not really maybe that deadly because it's still snakes. Then we have sort of the big fun reveal of this thing, where as soon as the players get close, she probably is going to throw a lever, or maybe wait till the first person steps up here, or they're trying to fight the snakes, work around. But let's say someone's up here, or they're about to. She pulls a lever, and the whole floor retracts. However you want to magically explain it. It retracts up, or it slides under here, or whatever. But we're just going to remove it. So this will ultimately be a 6x12 terrain tray. We don't have the prototype in the studio here yet. So we're using a pair of 6x6s, but this will be one piece that you can remove pretty smoothly and cleanly if it's the 6x12. So the idea is, boom, the floor lifts away, revealing even more dangers. And this should be like a fun gag at the table. So we're using these pillars in the walls to hold up the terrain tray, and then you can reveal the whole thing. And each time you have a chance to reveal a bunch of more information and new challenges and more dangers, it tends to go over really well on the table. Players like the discovery, the thing, and the sort of dramatic reveal. So the fun here is now we have a couple of pillars which you could use potentially to do some platforming across, or there's a couple of ways across on either side if maybe somebody has to jump down. But there's there's definitely a couple of different ways to cross this, as well as a couple of different challenges. And we have the blade traps out here already. Once again, this is they're magnetic, so you could pop them out and reveal them if someone's heading on over there, or maybe you could split them up, put one over here. The thinking was over here we have, and this is something you can seed in the information to the players because they probably wouldn't find it easily. We have a secret door hidden over here. So there is sort of another path out, is they could go through the secret door, hop over here, and bump, head on their way over like this if they don't want to do the platforming across on the pillars. Of course, we could have, maybe the secret door is easy to find, it's only concealed, they can just pass the perception, could pop it off. It could have a trap that could then trigger, let's say, when that thing's open, it drops in another one of these guys, comes sliding out, and they can just sort of do a gag. Although maybe it's repeating the same gag, so we don't do it, but we have the option. We could also we could take the spears and use them as a floor trap, right? So it could be a thing that pops up when they step on the floor or something, pops up underneath the couch, and they get a little spike attack. So let's do that, hitting a different note. So then over here we have a couple of pedestals so they could get on up. And of course, again, we're trying to have the build guide the players into certain places where there's going to be danger, because again, up here, another false lid. So the idea that they jump up here, then boom, that would give way and there'd be spikes there. So once again, maybe there's a thing where they're noticing if they're climbing, they can notice little cracks, or they make a investigation, or some chance they have to notice the trap before they just fall headlong. And that's also why the treasure was there, so trying to lure them to come straight ahead. So then to further make things lively, we have the chromatic orbs here, which you can use. Sort of any of our LED stuff makes really great sort of magical MacGuffins. If you need a thing that's putting a force field around the boss, or shooting out scorching rays, or some sort of magical attack, you do something that happens at 1 on the initiative every round, just it's auto attack the closest thing, whatever. It's really fun. We've got a lot of neat LED things that make cool magical defenses that can be sort of automated magical defenses to give. Because once again, if we only have one boss here, you want to give a bunch of challenges so different players have things to deal with. Maybe someone's got to deal with use Arcana or Dispel Magic or something to deal with this, while someone else is trying to make their way across, whatnot. Meanwhile, to give them something else to deal with, we can pull a little lever. We do this thing. We can spin this wall around, and then have pop a magnetic crossbow trap on there, and have this could be like an auto firing repeating crossbow trap or something. Once again, to give another challenge for players to deal with, instead of just having to deal with the boss. And then we have a nice tough area to fight in here, right? Because of the spikes and the elevation and the whatnot. So if the boss does hop out and start fighting, it becomes a pretty dynamic area to have a combat in. Should be pretty fun. If we wanted to escalate things even further, like if this wasn't enough escalation, we could throw in the Guardian Constructs pack. It's another one of my favorite packs in this dungeon collection. So it's got a pair of these construct walls. Love these guys. Such a cool sculpt. So we could do something like we could move this guy over here and replace, boom, pop these guys down on either side. Let's get this table out here. Or maybe even closer to the throne. That looks pretty menacing. We could also take the floors out and just put them directly, slide them all the way if they wanted to be in line with the walls. But for right now, we'll put them there. And the fun gag with these guys is they pop out, and then we can replace it with the active version, right? So there's an active and inactive version of both. So now you'd have a couple of goons that could be moving around trying to fight the players while they're trying to get to the boss. And what's fun particularly with constructs and a build like this, there's a lot of opportunities for the players to exploit the environment. What's fun is when you have all these sort of environmental hazards or passive hazards, there's chances for the players to trick the construct into falling into the pit or falling into the lava, or pushing them into the spikes or pushing them out the pillar. There's a way to sort of maneuver around the bad guys, and you feel really smart if you can find a way to kind of use the defenses that were already built, the traps are already there on the bad guys. It's very, very satisfying. The other gag you can also do with these things, it wouldn't work in this sort of encounter, but you can have them empty with a player, they get to the room, there's these outlines in the wall that are empty, and that's kind of disconcerting, and then you hear, from out the room behind them or whatever, thud, 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 and then the constructs come in or something. These pieces are very fun to work with, particularly the reveal when the guys come out is, it's always a crowd pleaser. And then in that pack, we also there's a pair of Gorgons, so we could have, these could have been some automated defenses in here, like we could have popped these guys like on either side, and there's some sort of automated thing, like they have if something crosses their line, they can just go forward and try and ram it into the lava. So that kind of hits a new note in our challenges, and that would free us up to put these things. These could be also automated from there, and they could maybe like slide around. They could be moving blade traps that the boss could sort of move around and have them slide around the floors and try and chop the players like little angry droids or something. And then finally, in that pack, we got a pair of the pillars. They have a little pedestal topper and then a savage gargoyle on top. There's a pair of those. They're fearsome looking little boys. So the gag we could do with these, if we wanted, is we could replace the plain pillars with these guys, and then the path across, the platforming path across becomes a lot more difficult. Maybe you have to convince these guys to give up their perch so that you can get across for to jump across, or you have to fight them to kill them to then access the perch or something. So it makes the platforming across even more difficult and adds even more flair to the room. But basically there's no wrong way to pop in traps and surprises for your players as long as you give them a fair chance to know some of the stuff's coming, avoid gotchas, and give them lots of opportunities to use their skills and their spells and their abilities and some clever thinking to manipulate this environment. And we're creating an interactive three-dimensional puzzle for them to try and figure out how to navigate it. And it'll be fun for everybody at the table. All right. As if all that wasn't enough, one other fun thing you could do is if you wanted to, instead of putting spikes here, we could have swapped one of these floor traps. So we use the bottomless pit, insert, put that in there, hence the reveal. So then when they hop on here, it's a pit, and that could drop them down into, it could be lock. I didn't really fully build it out, but let's see if I can. So this is supposed to be a 6x12 terrain tray. We don't have the prototypes here yet, so we're using two 6x6s. So it's a little janky, but it'll be smoother with a 6x12. So this is actually just built. All we did here is just build using regular walls, floors, and the like, and that's suspending everything up, holding the terrain tray up. So you could have like little cells built in here and have anybody that falls in there drops into a cell, and then maybe they have to fight a separate counter down here. You could put a guardian in the cell or a henchman or something could be down here for them to deal with while everybody else is fighting up above. And you could have this area on the side so you could track both pieces of combat at the same time. Or you could just keep lifting it up and putting it down. But the elevation is really simple to accomplish, right? We're just putting any walls, floors. It doesn't even really matter if you're not going to play in there around to support the terrain tray, and then it sits on here. Same as these terrain trays were sitting. This terrain tray was sitting on these ones. And then at the bottom, we're just exposing the terrain tray, the lava down here for negative space, right? And this could be water, this could be acid, it could be whatever terrain tray you have on hand. You could print something out. But the idea is having the negative space exposed creates a very easy hazard. It looks really cool, gives you a splash of color just by not putting floors wherever you want to see that's negative space. So hopefully this will inspire you in some of the many techniques you can use with our traps. And that's an overview of some of the many ways you can use our dungeons, traps, and hazards. For some other devious ideas, download our free PDF, Dungeon of Doom, available at the link below in the description. For other dungeon tips and tricks, check out our Dungeons playlist. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on this or any other quality content from us here at Dwarven Forge. Thank you so much for watching, and now, it's back to the anvil!